Hey guys, welcome back to How to Roll Dice. I'm Josh, and today we're going to be doing a review and walkthrough of this game here, Dungeon Roll by Tasty Minstrel Games. Dungeon Roll is an action-adventure dice game that sees players delving farther and farther into a dragon's lair in an effort to accrue magical items and to gain experience points. At the end of the game, whoever has collected the most experience points wins. The game itself is relatively simple and easy to learn, it's quick to play, and it's pretty cheap to pick up. It's only about $15 or $20. It's certainly not a game that's going to be in your top 5 all-time games. It's not going to blow your mind with its mechanics or its complexities. It's not going to win Game of the Year. But it is a great game to pull out every now and then because it's just fun and enjoyable. It's a great game for new players to learn. It's a great game for younger players because it's not so sort of monotonous. It's not so daunting that they can't sort of dive right in and sink their teeth into it. It's really good for that. And it's also good for filling time on nights where you don't necessarily want to jump into a 2 or 3 hour game. Or maybe you're planning on jumping into a 2 or 3 hour game, but everybody hasn't shown up yet. So you pull this guy out and you jump into a quick 30-minute session and you have a lot of fun. I really like this game. I've constantly gone back to it when I'm looking for something quick and fun to jump into, and it's always been there for me. So, looking into what comes in the box. We've got some cards, we've got some cardboard tokens, we've got some dice, and we've got a nifty pocket-sized pamphlet-esque rulebook. Because like I said, not a lot of rules to go over. Getting into the cards, we've got 2 different types here. We've got these reference cards. These are going to remind players of the different types of treasure that they can find and how that treasure works. And they're going to be reminded of how the dice work. You've got your party dice and your dungeon dice. Basically, the core mechanic of the game is you're going to use your party dice to cancel out the dungeon dice. If you do, you successfully complete a level of the dungeon, you move on to the next level. That's the game in a nutshell. Then you've got your character cards here. Your character cards represent the characters that you and your opponents are going to be playing as. It's sort of your party leader. There are several different cards here that are basic tropes of D&D style party members. You've got an occultist, a crusader, an enchantress, a minstrel, a mercenary, a knight. Nothing you haven't seen before. These are unique in the sense that they have specials as well as ultimates that you get to use while you're delving, so that's kind of cool. Each player is going to get one of those. You've got the tokens here. These tokens represent the treasure tokens. They're basically split into items and stand-in party members. The items are magical things like town scrolls and dragon's bait. The party members actually stand in as party members on your party dice. If you don't roll the ones that you need, you can sort of have backups on treasure tokens. Then these ones here represent the XP that you've collected throughout your delves so far. These are numbered 1, 3, 5, and 10, and are pretty much used to keep track of your victory points, your experience points. Then as far as dice go, we have 3 different types. We have this one single large 10-sided die. This is used to keep track of the current level that you are on in the dungeon. We have these white 6-sided die here. These are the party dice. These are going to represent the party members in your delving group. So just like in D&D, you have a group of friends together that form the party. These dice here show your party members. You've got mages, fighters, clerics, thieves, champions, and you can also get scrolls in there that have a useful little mechanic. Then you've got these black 6-sided die here. These are the dungeon dice. These represent the monsters, the dragon itself, the chests, and the potions that you may come across while delving into the dungeon. And then, of course, the rulebook and a little pamphlet that goes over some of the details of how the characters work if you're looking for a little more information there. So, getting into setup. Each player, you can play with 1 to 4 players. There's a solo mode for this game. Each player is going to get a reference card. Each player is going to be randomly dealt, or simply choose, one of the available characters, and they're going to place it in front of them with the basic side of the character face up. One of the nifty things about these characters is that they can actually level up into an advanced form of that character. So for example, the knight levels up into a dragon slayer, or the crusader levels up into a paladin. That's pretty cool. So each player is going to get one of those and put it in front of them basic side face up. So like I just said, the crusader / paladin will start on the crusader side. And then you're going to determine who the starting player is by figuring out who is the last player to have most recently been underground. That player is going to take all 7 white party dice. The player to their left is going to be their dungeon lord. They're going to take the 1 10-sided level dice and all of the black dungeon dice. They are then going to set the level die to level 1, because every time you go delving, you start on level 1. It's not like you make progress from one turn to the next. You always start on level 1 and go as far as you can get. And they are then going to pick up one of the black dungeon dice and roll it, because you always roll a number of dungeon dice equal to the level that you were on. So that's sort of the dungeon lord's job. They're sort of the DM for the active player. The active player is going to assemble their party. This is done by picking up all 7 of the white dice and rolling them. and whatever comes up is your party. You might have a couple of mages, you might have a thief, you might have a champion, you might have a cleric or a fighter. That's what you got to work with for this delve. And that's important because for the most part, you don't ever really get to add dice to your party, and you don't ever really get to recoup dice once you've spent them. You're just sort of slowly whittling down your party until you run out of steam, and then it's usually a good idea to retire to the tavern. You can continue to push your luck, but there's a good chance that you're going to fail to complete a dungeon and get chased out, at which point you lose all of the progress that you've made during that delve. So, again, getting started, everybody's got a character, everybody's got a reference card. The active player has rolled all of the party dice, assembling the party. The dungeon lord to their left has set the starting level die to 1 and has rolled 1 black dungeon die. So whatever comes up on that dungeon die is what the active player has to resolve in order to make it through that level of the dungeon. So say, for example, on the dungeon die, we see a skeleton. There are basically 3 different types of monsters: a skeleton, an ooze, and a goblin. There's the dragon symbol, which slowly accrue in the dragon's lair until you get 3 or more dragon dice in the dragon's lair, at which point you have to fight the dragon. And then we've got potions and chests. So starting with monsters, you've got skeleton, ooze, and goblin. Say, for example, a skeleton is shown. Well, with a single die, it doesn't really matter which party member you use to resolve that skeleton. You could use a mage, you could use a cleric, you could use a fighter, you could use a thief, or you could use a champion. You can't use the scrolls to resolve monsters. So, or anything really. You can sort of use them to resolve potions. That's a little weird, but I'll get into that in a minute. So, you choose one of your party members, they're called companions, and you discard that die to discard the black dungeon die. It's basically a 1-for-1 cancel out. Now, as you get farther into the dungeon, say you're on level 4, well, now your dungeon lord is going to be rolling 4 dungeon die. So when those dice are rolled, you might see multiples of a specific type of monster. Say, for example, you get 3 goblins and an ooze. Well, instead of going 1-for-1 with your party member dice to the dungeon dice, which means you're going to run out of dice very quickly, you could be economical about it. So, for example, if I said, just there I said 3 oozes and a goblin, I believe, well, mages can wipe out any number of oozes. So a single mage will wipe out all oozes in the current roll. A single cleric will wipe out all skeletons in the current roll. A single fighter will wipe out all goblins in the current roll. And a champion can wipe out any of one type of monster in the current roll. So you could choose goblins, you could choose skeletons, you could choose oozes. A thief doesn't have any specific monster that it can sort of max out on. However, if there are chests in the roll, normally it's a 1-to-1 to open a chest. So if you had 3 chests and you didn't have any thieves, you might have to use a mage and a fighter and a cleric to open these 3 chests if you wanted to. You don't have to open chests, you don't have to drink potions. As long as there's no monsters left and you don't have to fight the dragon, you can just move on to the next level of the dungeon if you want to. You can leave the chests and potions behind. But say you had 3 chests and you wanted to open all 3, and again, you wanted to do it in an efficient way. Thieves can open up all treasure chests currently available in that roll. So that's sort of their max out. It's not a monster, it's chests. With potions, any single die, including scrolls, which is kind of interesting because I always picture an animated scroll with arms walking up and drinking a potion, but any single die can be discarded to quaff all potions, meaning drink all potions. For each potion that you quaff, you can take a single discarded party die and return it back to your available dice with any side that you want facing up. So if it's just a single potion, that's basically just take a die and set it to whatever face you want, right? Because if you think about it, you have to discard it to drink the potion, and then you bring it back to any facing that you want from having drank the potion. However, if it's 4 dice that are all potions, and you discard a single die to quaff all 4 potions because any single die discarded quaffs all potions, then not only is the die that you just used coming back, but 3 more on top of that are coming back. So that's how you can actually rebuild your party, is with potions. And again, with chests, for each chest that you open, you're going to go into this lovely treasure chest here, and you're actually going to gain a piece of treasure, which is pretty nice. Treasure can be used at any point throughout your turn, or at the end of the game if you haven't used it, it actually counts as additional XP. Each treasure unused is worth 1 XP, except for town portals are worth 2 XP because they're particularly useful pieces of treasure since they're basically a get out of jail free card. So if you hang on to them at the end of the game, it shows that you really toughed it out when you didn't have to. So those are worth 2 XP instead of 1. And then dragon scales are worth 2 XP for every pair of dragon scales that you have. So on their own, they're not worth anything. Once you pair them, they're worth 2. Everything else is worth 1. And then you've got the XP that you accrue throughout the game. So, on your turn, You're going to have your Dungeon Lord set to level 1, roll 1 die, you're going to roll your entire party, and you're going to cancel out the die that they have rolled with one of your own die. If on their first turn you have no issue wiping it out, say it's a skeleton, you get rid of a mage, okay, 1 for 1, boom, it's gone. Okay, do you want to continue? You can either retire to the tavern, you've cleared level 1, which means you'll gain 1 XP. You retire to the tavern and your turn is over. You pass the white dice to the Dungeon Lord, they become the active player. The Dungeon Lord passes all of the black die, both the actual 6-sided dice and the 10-sided die, to the person to their left, and they become that person's Dungeon Lord, and so on and so forth around the table. If you want to continue to press your luck, which usually you're not going to stop after just 1 level, you say, I want to go on to level 2. Your Dungeon Lord is going to adjust the level die to level 2, and they are then going to pick up 2 black dungeon dice and roll them. Now keep in mind, as soon as those dice are cast, as soon as the first dice clinks off of the table, you're going into that level. There is no backing out. You said you wanted to do it, you have to do it. If something comes up that for some reason you can't deal with at all, you lose, you get chased out of the dungeon, you lose all XP that you would have acquired on that delve. You don't lose XP that you've acquired on previous delves, but this turn, say you made it into level 4 and then you wanted to go into level 5 but you couldn't defeat what popped up, you lose everything. You get no XP, your turn is over, pass the dice to the player to your left, they pass the Dungeon Lord dice to the player to their left, and they start their little spiel going. So it's a press your luck kind of system. If you get to a point where you feel like you have no chance of making it through the next level, stop. Retire, gain the XP equal to the level that you completed through, and let the next player start their turn. On your turn, if you roll any dragon symbols, those dragon symbols get pulled off to the side. As soon as you have 3 or more dragon symbols in the sort of dragon's lair, which is what you call the area that you store them in, you have to fight the dragon. To defeat the dragon, you have to discard 3 separate companions, 3 separate party members of different types. So you could do a champion and a mage and a fighter. You could do a thief and a cleric and a mage. It doesn't matter, it just has to be 3 different types. And it doesn't matter how many dice are used to trigger the dragon. Say for example, somehow you get up to 5 dragon dice and then you fight the dragon. It doesn't mean that you now need to discard 5 different companion types, 5 different party members. It's always 3, and it's just 3 different types of party members, and you're good to go. You've defeated the dragon. I already mentioned what you can do with chests and how potions work, and you can leave those behind if you want. So, say for example, level 1, your Dungeon Lord rolls a dice and it comes up with a chest. Just leave it. Just leave it, go, okay, cool, level 2, didn't have to burn any dice. Say level 2, they roll a potion and a chest. Don't need them. Cool, moving into level 3 with all 7 dice. Just hold on to your party dice because it's going to let you get farther into the dungeon. You don't really need that little treasure, you don't really need a potion because you haven't lost anybody yet, so you're not going to get anybody back. It would allow you to free turn the face of a dice, I guess, so if you wanted to turn 1, that's fine, but you have to start thinking about, is there really any return on me doing this? You have to start weighing, is this actually going to make things better for me, or is it going to make things worse for me, given that I'm going to need to press as far as I can into this dungeon because XP is really what wins me the game. So you start to think about things like that, and then you start to think about how to use the treasures. Some of these treasures are pretty straightforward because, like I said, a town portal is basically a get out of jail free card. But Dragon's Bait, which turns all remaining monsters into dragon symbols, thus pretty much guaranteed starts the dragon fight, kind of seems weird at first. You think like, why would I want to have to fight the dragon? That seems difficult, and I might not have the right setup for that, but in some scenarios, it's actually better than what you might be dealing with. Say, for example, you have 3 party dice left. You have a mage, you have a fighter, and you have a cleric. And you're going into level 5 of the dungeon. Well, you're already at a disadvantage. You only have 3 dice, and you know that your Dungeon Lord is about to roll 5. So unless some multiples come up, or a chest or a potion that you can leave behind, you might be in trouble here. Well, say, for example, after they roll those 5 dice, and you realize, oh god, how am I going to defeat that? You just turn them all into dragons using Dragon Bait, a treasure that you've found on an earlier level. Well, they're all dragons now. They shift off to the dragon's lair. There are no monsters left in the dungeon, but you've triggered the dragon. Okay, well, there's 7 dragon dice over there now. So this dragon comes out. You need to discard 3 separate companions. Well, you have 3 separate companions. You have a mage, a fighter, and a cleric. So you dump those. The dragon's gone, because again, the size of the dragon doesn't matter. It's just 3 different companions. And you've now completed a level that you otherwise would have been kind of screwed on. So you went from a situation where you were losing to a situation where you were easily winning by actually choosing to fight the dragon. It's like simplifying things by choosing one really hard option. So the different sort of options that you have for treasure and the ability that the fact that you can have different companions from the treasure. Like I said, you can have stand-ins. So maybe you don't have any clerics on your dice, but you have some cleric treasure symbols, which are basically stand-in clerics that you can put out there and discard as if they were on dice. You have to use those wisely, because you have to keep in mind you can't do things like, for example, if you quaff a potion, you can't flip a treasure, right? It's a cleric. It's a stand-in cleric. It can't be anything else. So you're only gonna be able to flip what's on your dice. So those are a little different. They're like weaker versions because they can't be manipulated. They can't become other things. But other than that, they work just like they would if it was the symbol on the actual die. So you have to start working in how and when you want to use those things. Anyways, you go through your turn, you go as far as you can into the dungeon. Hopefully you make it out alive and you gain some XP. If not, you lose and you get chased out. And then you move on to the next player's turn. You're going to go around the table like that until everybody has made 3 delves. Once each player has made 3 delves, you're going to stop. You're going to tally up what everybody has for XP, factoring in the additional XP gained from having held onto treasure at the end of the game. And whoever has the most XP wins. At the end of the game, whoever has the most XP in a tie is the player with the fewest treasure contributing to that total value at the end of the game. So straight XP trumps XP plus treasure. One thing I forgot to mention. If you do fight the dragon and win, you gain 1 additional XP on top of whatever you already would be earning. You actually gain it immediately, so even if after that you get chased out of the dungeon, you still get that 1 XP from having defeated the dragon. And you get to pull a free treasure out of the chest on top of any other treasure that you would be normally pulling from chests, and that's immediate for having defeated the dragon. So fighting the dragon is actually a pretty good thing if you can pull it off. And that's the whole game. There's not a lot of complexity to it. I think the only other thing I didn't mention was your leveling up of your character. So like I said, they all have a character on the opposite side, an upgraded version. As soon as you have earned 5 XP, you can flip that character over and use the other side. And their specials and ultimates are very straightforward. So for example, the Crusader here. So on the Crusader side, the specialty, which is an ability that's pretty much passive, you can use it during your turn as much as you want, as many times as you want. Fighters may be used as clerics, and clerics may be used as fighters. Pretty straightforward, kind of fits the theme of Crusader / Paladin. The ultimate, which is the you can do this once per delve ability, and once you've used it, you tap the card by turning it sideways to remind yourself that you've used it. The ultimate for the Crusader is Holy Strike, and that is the Crusader may be used as a cleric or a fighter. So they basically get to stand in as a party member. Once you've upgraded to the Paladin, you flip the card over. Now your specialty, your sort of passive ability, is fighters may be used as clerics and clerics may be used as fighters, so same deal. And your ultimate becomes Divine Intervention. Discard 1 treasure token that you currently have to defeat all monsters, open all chests, quaff all potions, and discard all dice in the dragon's lair. That's pretty intense. So being able to use that once per delve is really awesome. If you can get to 5 XP on your first delve and unlock the flip side of your card, your second 2 delves are going to be way easier to get through. So yeah, that's how character abilities work, that's how the characters work, and that's the whole setup of the game. It's pretty straightforward. I'd say you can get through a game in anywhere between 20 and 30 minutes, depending on whether or not you need to explain the rules to people. And I like that the whole thing kind of just like packs up ready for an on-the-go adventure. You can kind of toss this into a backpack. I mean, you could practically fit it into your pocket depending on what kind of pants or shorts you're wearing. But yeah, it's a good game, it's a fun game, it's simple, it's the push your luck mechanic makes it really kind of fun, and everybody gets kind of worked up watching what's going to happen, you know. Everybody's like, oh no, why would you go for that, it's not going to work, and they go for it and it somehow works and everyone's just like, ah! Yeah, so it's a fun game, it's enjoyable, it's never really left my common rotation. We get into stints where we're playing much bigger games, larger games that take up more time, that we really want to go 2 or 3 weeks into to wrap our heads around and try to get a good feel for. But then you kind of just want to slow things back down and you're like, I'm looking for something simple. I don't want to rack my brain tonight. Oh look, dungeon roll. Let's pop that guy out. So yeah, I would recommend it. It's a fun game. Give it a try if you can, and I bet you'll like it. Hope you guys have enjoyed this review. If you haven't yet, please go down below and leave a like or a comment, subscribe to the channel, set the notification bell to all so that you get notified next time I post a video, which I'm trying to stick with Tuesdays on, but it's a little tricky because my life is hectic, but Tuesdays is the plan, at least 1 video a week. I also stream on the weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday on twitch.tv/howtorolldice. If you haven't followed me yet, I have social media everywhere, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and I try to keep you guys updated of when I'm going to be posting, what I'm posting, any changes to the schedule. But yeah, other than that, I will see you guys in the next video. Have a good night.